Game schedules have dropped for all NBA teams, and I'm here to break down all the important dates and games for this Miami Heat team going into the 2024-2025 NBA season. So let's get to it and not waste any time and break it all down. And obviously, we're going to start with the NBA preseason, where everything is going to start for really everyone in the NBA, obviously. So obviously, this is the schedule broken down by month. If we look on the left-hand side, we see a legend. So the black shaded games are home games. The games with the top left shaded are away games. Then the grayed out games are obviously the preseason games, followed up by the red shaded games of being in-season tournament group play games. The blue shaded squares are going to be in-season tournament knockout rounds, and then the green square is going to be the Mexico City game. And if you see any initials, the E is for ESPN, the T is for TNT, and the N is for NBA TV, and that again is for the national televised or the television schedule, if you will. So now let's get to it and break down the preseason games that are going to start this NBA season for this My Meat squad. It's going to start at Charlotte for the first game before coming home to host the Atlanta Hawks, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the San Antonio Spurs before going to Memphis to close out the NBA preseason against the Grizzlies. So again, that is what the preseason is going to look like for this My Meat team. And again, these are the gray shaded games in the first 2 weeks of the month of October. And then if you look on October 23rd, the home opener, game 1 of 82 for this My Meat team is against an in-state, in-division rival in the Orlando Magic. Now, I don't have to tell you how important this game is, but this game is very important. There's no way around it. This game is very, very important. There's no way around it. We have to beat a team that is not only in our division, but again, in our state. It is our biggest competition. We need to be able to establish ourselves as a dominant, competitive team, and we have to do it against an in-state rival, against the Orlando Magic. We cannot drop game 1 to an in-division rival, and a team that is very promising that we saw last year in the Orlando Magic make the playoffs, win the division, and really make the Miami Heat look just too old to compete with a team as young as the Orlando Magic. We need to come out and showcase that is not the case, and we need to really establish ourselves. But then we continue. We go to Charlotte before coming home and hosting the Pistons and the Knicks to close out the month of October. Again, that is going to be another massive game for this Miami Heat team. Again, playing against the New York Knicks, who again were very, very good last year, being led by Jalen Brunson and the great role players they have. Then we enter the month of November. November 2nd is going to be that Mexico City game that is going to be massive for this Miami Heat team. They were selected a few months ago to go represent the NBA and play in that Mexico City game against the Washington Wizards. Obviously, we should beat the Wizards. You know how I feel about that. We should beat up on teams that are lesser teams than this Miami Heat team, especially when it comes to looking at how they look on paper, especially when we step on the floor and how these players actually compete. We should definitely beat the Washington Wizards. But then we continue through the month of November. We only have 3 home games against the Sacramento Kings, the Philadelphia 76ers, a massive Eastern Conference game, as well as against the Dallas Mavericks. But in the middle of the month of November, we go to Phoenix, followed by to Denver, to Minnesota before going to Detroit and Indianapolis. All 5 of those games are going to be on the road, and the 2 games against Denver and Indianapolis are going to be in-season tournament group play games. Again, going to be massive, massive implications on those wins and losses and whether or not the Miami Heat gain them. But before we even get into the in-season tournament stuff, that 3-game road stand out west is going to be a massive, massive look ahead for this Miami Heat team and how they're going to compete against not only Western Conference teams, but again, the top of the entire NBA. Obviously, Denver is going to be very, very good, led by Jokic. He's probably going to be in a running for another MVP. Phoenix with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Obviously, they have no slight of offense. They are going to be able to play a high level of basketball. Another big test for this Miami Heat team. And finally, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. This team is a legit team that almost made it to the NBA Finals last year, that is led by a lot of young, very promising talent. And again, the Miami Heat, all 3 of these games are going to be absolutely massive to really figure out what type of team this Miami Heat team is going forward. And again, we're going to be in the first month of the season still. Obviously, we start the actual NBA season on October 23rd. These games are going to be taking place November 6th, 8th, and 10th. These games are going to be just so detrimental on how this Miami Heat season is going to go forward. Circled all three of those dates. They are going to have massive implications. So then we continue. Then we have two games against Detroit and Indianapolis. Those games, again, are both going to be in-season tournament games, and this is what that looks like for this Miami Heat team. This is the schedule just broken down in a much cleaner format, if you will. Shout out to Miami Heat on Twitter for posting this and the great graphic they used. Heat in-season tournament at Pistons, at Pacers, then hosting the Bucks and the Raptors. Again, the dates on the left and the times on the right, and then at the bottom it says December 10th and 11th are the quarterfinal rounds. That is going to be huge, as well as December 14th and 17th are going to be the semifinal and championship rounds that are going to be played in Las Vegas, so no home court advantage for anyone in that scenario, but again, massive in the sense of trying to compete against all the top teams in that in-season tournament. We continue after the game at Indianapolis, and we go again at Indianapolis again with no implications in the sense that it is just a regular season game at Indianapolis immediately following the in-season group tournament play game that we play on the 15th. We host the Philadelphia 76ers for the first time. That, again, I don't even have to tell you guys, going to be a massive game for this Miami Heat team. Another Eastern Conference rival that we had to compete against a lot last season, especially when it got down to the nitty-gritty, getting closer to the playoffs. So, again, that is going to be interesting. We close out the month of November with two in-season tournament group play games against the Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors. So again, that is going to be very, very interesting. Massive implications on all of these games. We go to the month of December, and there's a lot of in-season tournament knockout games. This is where they're all going to be played. We're really going to find out the champions and really who's going to make it to those semifinal rounds from the in the month of December, from the 10th until the 17th. That is going to be strictly in-season tournament play, and then we will figure out the winner, and we will start the second half of the season following after that, entering the month of January. Now, if you look at the month of January and February, you will notice something. There is not a lot of home games for this Miami Heat team. Obviously, we play 2, 4, 5. There's 8 games at home in the month of January, but again, there's about the same amount on the road. And then we get to the month of February, and we only have 3 home games, and the rest of them are all away games. It's going to be a lot of games on the road. This is going to be a very, very tough stretch for this Miami Heat team. Obviously, the teams aren't that great. It's not like we're playing Murder's Row, but again, the Spurs, Chicago, we do play Philadelphia on the road on the 5th of February. That is going to be massive right before the NBA trade deadline. Then at Brooklyn before coming home to host the Boston Celtics. Obviously, Eastern Conference rival, just won the NBA championship. Massive game on our hands there. Then obviously on the road once again, OKC and Dallas, both out west, two very good teams, very competitive young teams, going to be very, very tough stretch for this Miami Heat team. The 14th through the 20th, we have off. That will be All-Star Weekend. That will be a good rest for this Miami Heat team, as the majority of these games are going to be on the road. We come back, we go to Toronto, we go to Milwaukee, we go to Atlanta. 3 massive games for this Miami Heat team, again, because they're all Eastern Conference teams. They're all on the road following the All-Star break. We need to get off to a hot start before coming back home for a massive homestand. We host Atlanta, we host Indianapolis, we host the Knicks, we host Washington before going to Cleveland. But then the majority of these games are going to be at home. From the 7th until the 14th, we are at home for 5 games before going on the road to Memphis and the Knicks. Then we come back home from the 19th through the 28th. We are at home again for 5 more games before closing out with 2 games on the road, again at Philadelphia and at Washington. Another 2 games on the road against Eastern Conference teams. This is another big stretch for the Miami Heat, as we're now going into April and things are closing out, and we need to close out on a hot start, or on a hot streak. We go to Boston for the first game on the 2nd of April, first game in April. That's going to be massive. And then we come home for Memphis, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia on the 7th. That game against the Philadelphia 76ers on April 7th may be one of the biggest games of the entire NBA season for this Miami Heat team, as that will be game 79 of 82. Is going to be a massive game before going on the road to Chicago and to the Pelicans before closing out with the Washington Wizards at home. Again, that is the entire Miami Heat schedule. You can pause, look at it in depth, really look at it how you may, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this Miami Heat team competes, as we do have to go on the road for a bunch of tough games for long stretches of times, but then we are rewarded and we get to come back home and have a host of home games where we really should attempt to capitalize. Obviously, last year we were not great at home. That is something that needs to change this up and coming season, especially in those late months of February, March, and April. We need to take advantage and win those games at home and really propel ourselves to the top, if not the middle, of that Eastern Conference. But again, that is going to be it for this episode of Heat Digest. I will leave you guys with one thing, and that is that the Miami Heat are currently set at 44.5 wins. So if you were to bet on this, you would be betting on the Miami Heat to win 45 or more games or 44 or less games. Let me know in the comments what you guys, if you had to put money on it, what would you bet on for this Miami Heat team going on into next season? Would you bet on 45 or more wins, or would you bet on 44 or less wins? Let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys on the next episode of Heat Digest.